All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to episode 87 of the Drew Pavlou Show. I'm here with Andrew Phelan, special guest today. We're going to be speaking about China. So China is the subject of this episode, and we're very lucky to have Andrew here. Like me, he's been attacked by the Chinese government here in Australia. He had an arrest. Literally was caring for his dying mother, and there was a false swatting attempt against Andrew. So we'll get into that. We'll give it like a minute or two for some people to join. I think it's your first time ever streaming, right, Andrew? But you're often doing news coverage and
which is live.
Yeah,
technically not streaming.
So it's the same sort of thing. It really is the same sort of thing.
I'm catching up the young dog. Teaching the old dog.
A
few new tricks.
I'm just going to post the YouTube link as well on Twitter. Okay, we'll give it.
So exciting.
Yeah, no, it's good. We'll give it a minute or so for people to join. We've got about 100 on Twitter, but only 4 or 5 on YouTube. So we'll give it a couple moments.
We've got 100 on Twitter.
Yeah, 100 on X, but only like 3 watching live on YouTube. So guys, if you're watching on X, go to my YouTube. Please go to my YouTube. It's very important. Leave a like as well. Helps us reach more people. Very important.
He's the expert.
And we've got some messages. I'll quickly respond to some messages. Someone goes, "What's going on with the court case? What's most likely outcome?" So, my latest with regards to the blank sign court case, I am back in court on September 2nd, I believe, and the Brisbane City Council is demanding that I hand over all transaction records for the past 3 years. So every time I even bought a coffee over the past 3 years, they want every single transaction I've ever made over the past 3 years.
That's relevant, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, and that's basically they want to work out whether I have the capacity to pay the $24,000 fine, which believe it or not, I don't have the capacity because I wish I had more money. But
so that's one of 2 big court cases coming up next month. We'll talk about another one later.
What's the other one? Yeah, of course. Anyway,
mystery at the moment.
Somebody say 2 Aussie battlers fighting the Red Dragon. Very well said. Why you know stream got arrested? No, I've just been lazy. I have to admit, I've just been lazy. But I've done about 87 streams in about 130 days. I was supposed to do 100 and 100, but I kind of lost momentum towards the end, unfortunately. But it's been good. Listen, we've only got 5
hours.
It's sad. We've only got like 5 people watching live on YouTube. Guys, we need you to help improve the numbers. If you're watching on Twitter, go through to the YouTube. I've posted the link on my YouTube. I've posted the link below my Twitter live stream. Go leave a like. Somebody says, "Get out of Australia, you greasy wog fuck." Okay, that's good. It's good to have the neo-Nazis here.
Can we send that person a pizza and an ice cream?
Yeah, of course.
Thank them for their contribution.
Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, I'll pay for it.
What happens if they deem you can't pay the $24K fine? Nobody knows. I don't even know what they're gonna do. I had said that I'd like to volunteer to serve a month in prison in place of doing the fine. They haven't accepted that yet so far.
Hello, Massimo Rosso.
Someone says, "What happened to 100 streams in 100 days?" I have to admit, unfortunately, I fell off the wagon a bit. I was, I did like 80 streams in 100 days. And then at that point I was like, oh, I may as well just do only a couple a week, but try and make them good. So look, the good thing is, Andrew is a good expert when it comes to China.
He's creepy.
This guy says, "I just hate Greek people. I'm not a Nazi." Okay, man.
I like old people.
Yeah. It's Saturday. People are getting their avocado toast and complaining about the cost of living. Thank you, Dota. Dota, leave a like. Kevin, leave a like on the stream. If you're watching live on YouTube, leave a like on the stream so that we can reach more people. It's very important. We've got a small turnout right now on YouTube. Hopefully it'll pick up a bit. We've got 3 likes. Leave a like so that YouTube will recommend us to more people. But listen, now that we've been going for a couple of minutes, let's start, Andrew.
Okay.
So Andrew, you first went to China in 1988. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was. I did.
So that was before
Tiananmen. Coming up. Yeah, it was 1 year.
We've got a comment from Andrew Hennessy. Thanks for joining, Andrew. Please leave a like on the stream. It helps us reach more people.
Mr. Hennessy, dialing in from Deutschland. Hello to you, sir.
Oh, you know him?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great. Yeah, I know him from Twitter. So
he's the man.
Yeah, he's got a good Twitter.
Yeah. A fellow Queenslander too.
Yeah, that's great.
I first went. So 2028 will be 40 years since my first trip to China.
Longer than believe that? That's pretty good and longer than I've been alive.
Crazy.
So that's pretty
1988
good.
was an interesting time. It's also the bicentennial of Australia. And I remember Zhao Ziyang, who was the then chairman of the CCP, made a little congratulatory message for Australia on its bicentenary.
Very nice of them.
Among world leaders, yeah.
Very
and
nice
that
of Zhang
summer,
Zemin.
oh my God, that first trip to China, I got on a really
So you were 22, right?
almost, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got on a beat-up old 747 at Tullamarine. I remember I found my seat. There was a dead bug in the window. There was half a seat belt. I said to the stewardess, excuse me, I've only got half a seat belt. And she said, well, you can go and sit over there then. She was really rude.
Right.
And then we got stuck.
So this is before the days of mass transit.
Back in those days, when if you got down to Hong Kong after your China trip, they used to sell these T-shirts. Just the predecessor of, well, it was called CAAC, China Airways Civil Administration or something. But the T-shirts always said CAC stood for China's Airways always crashes, or China's Airways always cancel. It was like, I survived CAC.
Right.
Because once a year, like 4 times a year, one of them would like fly into the side of a mountain, which happened outside Xi'an one time.
Bloody hell.
I used to be quite nervous. Anyway, so we get up to Guangzhou.
So this was the Chinese air carrier at the time.
State-owned
State-owned.
thing. Like the pilot is still, riding his flying pigeon bicycle to work, right? And he's flying a 747 back in the day. So we take off from Tullamarine, long flight. We stop at Guangzhou, stopover, and then they start loading cargo into the back of the plane, boxes of cargo, right? And then there's no seating or boarding passes. All these people get in and just crowd where they're like musical chairs. And we end up getting into Beijing. Oh, so we're stuck on the tarmac, like 36 degrees in the middle of summer, and we're not going anywhere. And then this voice comes on.
So this is Guangzhou.
Guangzhou. This voice comes on the intercom, and I remember it to this day. She goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to the stairs is trouble. We cannot take off." Brilliant. So okay. So we end up getting up to Beijing, and by the time it was like 14 hours, I'm completely exhausted. When you're that tired after long haul travel, it's like being really drunk. Yeah. And my first time overseas, and I was a kid, right? And then I leave my passport and my itinerary in the toilet at Beijing Airport, go into town, book into the Huadu Hotel in Sanlitun. And she's like, "Where's your passport?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So anyway,
the Australian embassy back in those days would have been really small, right?
Well, it wasn't the current site.
Yeah,
I don't actually know. On that trip, I didn't go to the Australian embassy, so I don't know where it was.
How'd you get your passport?
So I was staying with a journo, a foreign correspondent, Beijing correspondent, a guy that I knew through my best friend in high school, and he was writing for the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age and the FT, a guy called Robert Thompson. And so I said to Robert, what should I do? Should I go to the embassy? He said, just go back to the airport. They probably got it. So the next, like 2 days later, I went back, and there it was, and they gave it back to me.
That's lucky.
But
That's very lucky.
First day in China, I opened the drapes up. It was a boiling day. It was like nearly 40 degrees. Yeah. I look out the window.
It gets hot in Beijing, hey?
Yeah. It gets hot in a lot of seasons.
But it also gets really cold as well in the winter.
Yeah, it does. It snows. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'm going to get out and about, and so I rented a bike, cycled down to Tiananmen Square. Wow. Had my picture took in front of the Great Hall of the People. And I was like, wow, this is amazing.
That's crazy.
From that point on, it was like I was in a different world. I really enjoyed it.
That's amazing. By the way, we've got 13 people watching live, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Leave a like, helps us reach more people. 13 people on YouTube. We've got a couple, I think we've got like probably 40 concurrent on Twitter or something like that. Guys, if you're watching on Twitter, go to the YouTube, leave a like. If you're on YouTube, leave a like to help us reach more people. Somebody asked, can you give it some context for Andrew? So we're going to go into Andrew's whole life story, but basically Andrew is a longtime China hand, and he was arrested on false grounds as a result of a Chinese government-supported swatting attempt. So we're talking about his experience today, and it's a good show. It's really interesting discussing with Andrew all the knowledge he's got of China and everything. So back to Tiananmen.
Yeah, well, just before I started doing a little bit of Mandarin at night school, and so I was traveling around Beijing at that time, and I'd be like, "Ni hao," it was so fun. And students started coming over to Australia from China in about '86. And you could pick out the mainland China students on a bus or something that'd stick out like a sore thumb. So I'd see some dude on the bus, and I was just started learning Mandarin. So I'd be like, "Ni hao," and they're like, "Oh, ni hao zhen luan." And then, sorry, doggo. I think that was the motorbike next door.
Motorbike. So I heard some kind of bang. I thought, we had another earthquake.
So I'd sort of make friends with these guys, and they'd get you over, and you'd make dumplings and whatnot. And that really accelerated my learning early on.
Immersion's very important.
Yeah, 100%. What's the point of learning a language? The whole fun about learning a new language is connecting with people that you otherwise wouldn't. And both sides, to this day, I get a kick out of it, And so, yeah, that was the first trip. And that was inspired by, look, when in the 70s, all the toys and trinkets were made in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, they were made in South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and still in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then in the mid 80s, Deng had the special economic zones, started opening the place up. And I thought to myself, when we'd seen how Japan had developed, I thought to myself, all that manufacturing is going to pour into China. And I was right, and it did. And I thought China's going to be a really big, important country in the future, blah, blah, blah. And which it has. So that prediction was right. That's how it all started.
Well, good call with that. Tell us a bit more about your first trip there in 1988. You saw the Great Hall of People.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was before this was after Mao, but it was still pretty stultifying in China back then.
It was interesting. China just opened up, so a lot of people had, especially outside of Beijing, they'd never seen a foreigner before.
Wow!
So
that's amazing.
It was amazing. And back then they had kind of had two kinds of currency, nominally the same. But on the black market on the street, they what they called Waihui Yuan or FECs, foreign exchange certificates, had a value about 30% higher than RMB. Gradually, they phased out FECs when they didn't need them anymore. But for example, there was no McDonald's, but if you went to the KFC at Chenmen, they had a special line for FEC because they wanted to.
So they had a KFC then?
Yeah, in '88 they had a KFC
when did McDonald's open up in China?
That's a really interesting story. And one of my best old mates from my China days, Brian Schwartzwalder, love you, mate. His funerals this weekend. He just passed away. I went down from Nanjing to Hong Kong for some job interviews, and when I was flying back, I ducked into this McDonald's at the old airport and bought a bunch of Big Macs. And then when I arrived in Nanjing Airport, I was taking them to the custom. Guy goes, "What's in the bag?" I go, "Shipping, food, right?" And he goes, he waved me through. Then I got to Hopkins Nanjing Center, and there was this curious throng of Chinese students and everything that grabbed around us. We put the Big Macs in the microwave so we had these soggy Big Macs, and that is a very important point in China's modernization. The history of China's modernization, the first Big Macs ever eaten in Eastern China was smuggled in by yours truly.
Really?
That's correct.
That's funny. That's a great story.
And just on that line, we had this at the end of my time there. We had this career development seminar, and we had this guy Daniel Ng. You can Google him, everyone. Yeah. Daniel Ng was a Hong Konger, and he had a PhD in chemistry from Imperial College in London. And he came along to our career development seminar, and he introduced himself. He said, with his Cantonese accent, he goes, "My name is Daniel. I sell hamburger." That was his guy's worth about $100 million, right? And you sell a shitload of hamburgers, mate.
Wow.
So when McDonald's started in Hong Kong, everyone said, "Oh, the Chinese won't eat hamburgers; they'll eat chicken, KFC, but not hamburgers." And at the time, Daniel was the boss of McDonald's in Hong Kong. They had 8 of the 10 busiest McDonald's in the world at that time.
Wow, that's crazy.
But he came up; they didn't have them in Shanghai, and he said. It's a real important business lesson because they were saying you got to bring McDonald's, you got to invest, and he was like, "Listen, I bring everything. I vertically integrate. We do it the McDonald's way. We don't want you to interfere. We're investing and all that." And he waited until he got what he wanted before he invested, which is a very important lesson. Of course, him being Chinese, he sort of understood better than most how things worked in China. But back to my first trip. So '88 was the summer of inflation. Inflation got to about 38%, so there's quite a bit of instability. And then
people wanted blood when we had 10% inflation.
Yeah, you can imagine, right? So the government felt a lot of pressure because of this basket of goods that had gone up in price. And then that led to, so I was back 2 years later, and of course, 12 months after my first trip, we had Tiananmen, which started with the protests when Hu Yaobang died. He was quite popular among younger people.
Yes.
And then Gorbachev visited, and students were protesting, and the leadership was very angry that the students had sort of distracted from the Gorbachev visit.
So were you in China when Tiananmen happened?
No, I was back here. I watched it on TV.
Yeah,
I watched it on TV.
Wow.
But the atmosphere, So I was there a year before and a year after. And
Barme was there. Jeremy
Was he?
Barme.
Yeah,
I've talked to him a little bit about that. It's a crazy story.
I know a couple of people that were there, but anyway, so I was back a year after, and the atmosphere was completely different. So I was at this the Beijing Gaoji Guanli Gambu Shui and the Institute for High Level Cadres Training. I don't know what they did there, but that's where I had my Chinese lessons in the morning, and the afternoon I went to BHP's office as part of my internship, which was really cool because the guy that ran BHP in China back then, it was 2% of BHP's iron ore exports. Only 2%.
Now
Japan was the big customer. And the guy that ran it was a guy that went to Griffith University, a guy called Clinton Dines. And he went over there with some left-leaning students that thought Chairman Mao was really cool. And after 2 weeks in Nanjing, and by the way, Nanjing, I don't know if it's still the case, but back then, you had heating north of the Yangtze River, no heating, public heating south of the Yangtze River.
Wow.
Nanjing's on the south bank, and it snows in winter.
Wow.
No heating, right? So it was really rough. And they were supposed to learn Chinese while I was teaching English, but the Chinese side forgot about the learn Chinese bit. So they lasted about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Clinton stayed with a dictionary in his hand. And by the time I met him, his Mando was awesome. And and he was I was super lucky to work under him because he was a great mentor. And he used to say things like, if the Chinese are being rude, which they often were in meetings, they'd be really insulting. They'd say things like, we got 5,000 years of history. You're a Johnny-come-lately trash Western culture. They'd say it to your face. And he'd go, if the Chinese are being rude, be rude back. That's what he used to say. It was actually good advice. And he was very experienced.
So he just was rude back?
No, well, you just don't put up with it, right? You don't put up with it. Anyway.
Well, then I think you need to demonstrate strength.
You've got to bear in mind that from 66 to 76, the first 10 years of my life, that was Cultural Revolution. So young people in that era never went to university. Yeah. And they didn't have.
She was but he was one of the students who only got in after the Cultural Revolution ended.
He sort of got sent to the countryside. But there's a picture of him with a shovel, and he looks like he doesn't have blisters on his fingers.
It's amazing story, isn't it? Yeah. There's a lot of propaganda.
We can come back to that point there because he was kind of a princeling, red royalty. We'll come back to that later. So that was a really interesting year when I went back. I went out to Shogun Capital Steel and Iron Works, which was this huge state-owned enterprise with chimney stacks, 100,000 employees, belching pollution. But, in those first couple of years, nobody had cars. The streets were pretty empty. The big ticket items back then, if you wanted to keep up with the Wangs and the Lees and the Lius and the Joes, were Shoubiao, a wristwatch, a Shouyinji, a radio, and a Zixingche, a push bike.
The push bikes. I've seen all the photos of the push bikes.
They were the aspirational items. You think everyone on the push bikes, Flying Pigeon was the brand.
Yeah, wow.
They were really heavy. They had no speeds. Everyone kind of went at the same pace.
Wow.
And it worked out. But I remember that first trip. It was magical. I would be cruising along on my Flying Pigeon, no wind. And it was just, in the evenings on a hot day, it was beautiful. And you see the swallows flying around Tiananmen at the front of the Forbidden City.
Wow.
And it was just magical. I'll never forget. That trip changed my life. Yeah.
Wow, that's sensational. I'm jealous. I mean, I'm banned basically for life. But yeah, that's fascinating. So
I should add just on that second trip back in 1990, the students. So it was interesting. I remember the students in the building where I was living, and the Chinese students were in another building. But at night time, you'd hear the sounds of beer bottles being thrown out the window and smashed.
Yeah.
And one of my mates makes beer bottles in China, but they were really brittle. But it was symbolic. So a little bottle is Xiaoping, and what they were doing, they were smashing Deng Xiaoping because he'd signed off on the use of military force.
Wow.
And there was this.
There's a lot of clever wordplay in China.
Yeah.
I still remember
to get around the censors and everything.
I still remember when Shanghai was under really brutal lockdown. Someone brought an alpaca into the streets because alpaca doubles as grass-mud horse. Sanima, which is also motherfucker in Chinese.
Yeah.
Amazing, funny word.
Yeah. So they were smashing little bottles, and I remember going to a gig. There was a rocker, a guy called Sui Jian, who was Korean Chinese. He used to come to my school and play soccer. And I remember seeing his band in a basement in Sanli Tun. The locals call it Sanli Tur in Beijing accent. And I still listen to his stuff. And he's kind of the China's Bruce Springsteen, sometimes referred to that way. I remember going to that gig in a basement in Sanley Tuan. I've never been to a gig in my life where people went so nuts. I mean, they're a great band. I still listen to their music. And there were plainclothes guys and everything, but the students just didn't give a shit. They went absolutely mental. It was fantastic.
It's such a different era in Chinese history.
Yeah.
The culture was so open comparatively.
In 90, there was a lot of tension. Like I remember going to down to some market, and there were guys with helmets and fixed bayonets on their rifles, and you could see tank skid marks outside of, on the street at Zhengguo Menwai and
Tiananmen.
So Tiananmen is on Chang'an and it's a really long straight road. And if you keep going down one way, it becomes Zhengguo Menwai. So Zhengguo means to build the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and just opposite the street, on the other side of the street from me, were the old astronomical devices that were used by the Jesuits.
Oh wow!
Back in the day. Yeah. So much history. And the building I was in, I didn't know this until recently. I just read this recently. Got sprayed with bullets, and BHP had a company car, a white Peugeot, and that ended up with about half a dozen bullets in it. Really? And they left. They got it fixed up. They ended up.
So BHP Billiton, they
not Billiton, just BHP.
BHP. Yeah. But the big Australian mining company, they had a car that got shot up on Tiananmen.
Yeah, they had a pretty small operation back then. They were just getting going.
That's fascinating.
It was the beginning of it all. In fact, later on in life, I got invited back to do another internship, and I would have ended up, had I gone to BHP, I would have retired a long time ago.
Oh, you should have, mate. I wish.
Bad move. Oh, well. Okay. But, there was a lot of tension in the air, and Clinton advised us, don't get a taxi don't get in a taxi with a local, particularly at nighttime, because you could get them in serious trouble. And the other bit of advice he gave me, which was relevant to today, he said, beware of rich kids with fancy cars going out at night, like to clubs or whatever, getting hammered and behaving really badly because you don't know who their daddy is. That was a bit of advice. They're called the Taizedang or princelings.
The princelings.
And there was a book written around about that time. You could get it down in Hong Kong. Couldn't get books like that in Hong Kong today. But back then you could, about the Taizedang and what they got up to. We'll come back to that later.
Yeah. We've got a big.
So that's
we're going to go into the Australian.
That's how it all started. Yeah, way back when.
Wow. Sensational. And so, should we fast forward to what happened to you in Australia?
So let's do that. So
let's explain to people what happened.
Yeah. So I decided, me among other people, like Alex Farley, Lila Farley, look him up. He's got a great YouTube channel. I like him. Yeah. Just got he raps in Mando and English. He's very cool. Speaks amazing Mandarin. So me and him and a whole bunch of other people decided that the direction China was going under Xi was a real worry. And I decided in about 2011 to start talking about this stuff. I really don't like the term China hawk. And people accuse you of being anti-China.
It's got that. I've had that a billion times.
It's simplistic. Yeah. It's I had so many great friends and colleagues in China, people I love.
We've got a comment here. It says, Andrew, did you get honeypotted by a sexy Chinese lady?
Yeah, no.
This is the good thing about you. When you do live streams, you get that audience interaction. Very powerful.
I wasn't always this fat and ugly. I used to be young and pretty like this guy.
Oh, that's very funny. Very funny.
Where was I, Drew? Bring me back on the rails.
So you started talking about the CCP.
Oh, yeah. So why did I do that? Okay. So I recognized where the country was going, and there were three reasons I decided to speak. Reason number one was the militarization of reefs and atolls in the South China Sea that were 1,800 nautical miles from the coast of Hainan Island. And
which is the southernmost.
Yeah, and of course Xi Jinping had promised in the Rose Garden to Barack Obama that they would not be militarized, and he went ahead and militarized them. Rule of thumb, people, if China says it's going to go left, it's probably going to go right.
Many such cases, yes.
Anyway, so which is what happened. Scarborough Shoal is another example of that. I think back in sort of 2011.
Many of them militarized really.
Obama administration, Kurt Campbell was, pretty senior in the State Department. He brokered the standoff on Scarborough Shoal, and both parties, the Filipinos and the Chinese, agreed to leave the shoal. Filipinos left. The Chinese stayed and have stayed there ever since. Yeah. So that was one reason. Reason number two was I, and I've since been to Tibet. I spent a few weeks in Tibet in 2006. But
jealous. I'm really jealous. I'd love to go to Tibet.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's wild. Anyway, in 1999, I was in Poland and I was in Krakow, and I thought, well, I'm going to go to Auschwitz and have a look. And I went to.
I've seen that. Yeah,
I felt I should go there and see it with my own eyes. I felt compelled to see it. So I went to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and in the morning I was wandering around and I was listening to a tour guide, Polish lady. She had a group of Americans. I was on my own. They invited me to join them, which I did. And I got a blow-by-blow description of the setup, the planning, everything that went into it. And I've been to a lot of factories in my career all over the world. But this place was a factory at the end of a distribution network. It was a factory for stripping people of their valuables and then killing them,
Yeah.
And, I left that at the end of the day and I thought, what was the point of the exercise? Why did I come here? And the point of the exercise was, and I made a little promise to myself on that day, I said, if you see this happening in your life, on your watch, it's in your in tray, because it's very easy to take the moral high ground when it's overseas or 70 years ago. But if it's in your here and now, you're gonna speak up. You're gonna call it out. You're gonna do something. Because I don't want to live in a world. Frankly, I don't want to live in a world where that sort of evil is allowed to happen, and human beings are treated like that. That's not a world I want to live in. So you got to fight that with tooth and nail. So that was reason number two. When China started putting mass incarceration of Uyghurs, it reminded me in so many ways of the kind of industrialized, systemized way in which Jews were persecuted in World War II.
A lot of Jewish groups made that comparison. It's a really horrific thing.
Well, Michael Danby and I were invited, and he's Jewish. The two of us were invited to the end of Eid al-Fitr fasting lunch with the Melbourne Uyghur community, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, there's hardly anybody in that community that's not been impacted, had a family member, put into jail. It's terrible. And it just makes you appreciate and value the freedom that we have and the human rights that we have, So that was reason number two. And then the third reason, if you're in somebody else's country, it's not your country. It might be run in a different way or whatever, but you're a guest, right?
Yeah.
When the CCP started interfering in my country, that's a different story.
Absolutely.
That's a red line for me.
Absolutely.
And it became very apparent that they were starting to interfere here in many different ways. And, when I started talking, I knew there was, I'm not naive. I knew there was some risk to me personally. I knew it wasn't a good career move because I wouldn't be able to go back to China and Hong Kong. And, one of my old headhunters rang me up a couple of months ago and she said, hey, I've got this role, blah, blah, blah. I said, I can't go to Hong Kong and China. And she's like, why? And I said, I'd explain why. She said, you idiot. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I am an idiot. But, it's, that's just how I'm wired, I guess.
You know what's sad? Like, I'm starting to see things have really shifted over the past 2-3 years. I think G went so hard. He went so hard with the Wolf Warrior diplomacy that it backfired a lot. And I think they made a course correction where they did go on a charm offensive. And I'm starting to see obviously not for us.
They brought the level of abrasiveness down from 11 to the usual 5 to 7.
Yeah, exactly. But that was enough to make a lot of people in Australia forget what happened the past 5 years. Right?
Well, we got short memories. If you read Bethany Allen's fantastic book, which I highly recommend, Beijing Rules, she walks us through the steps, the early stage of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, this was, so before I came back home, because of my aging mum and dad, who have since gone to heaven, God bless them. Before I came home, I spent 15 years based in Singapore in the medical technology space. I worked for, Gore Medical, which is a surgical medical device company, spare parts for the body. I worked for GE Healthcare, which does CT, MR, X-ray, all that sort of gear. And in the middle, I worked for a Swedish company in the infection control space, surgical gloves, antiseptics, operating room stuff. And so I was in a lot of operating rooms. I've been in a lot of operating rooms in hospitals all over Asia, all over the world, in fact. And, I was quite close to infection control specialists and some WHO people. And we'd had SARS, we'd had MERS. When we had SARS in 2003, we actually lost some customers a vascular surgeon. We had lost some customers that came down with SARS. But China was actually more open in the Zhurongji days, and they invited CDC people and outside experts to come in and help.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we got on top of SARS relatively quickly. Then we had MERS, which was, if I remember correctly, I think it came from camels.
Yep.
Yeah. So in Singapore, one of the actually the head of the Workers' Party, Paul Tambia, he's an expert in the spread of flu viruses. I've been to hear him give lectures, and we had a great people like Cito Wong in Hong Kong, great guy who was with the WHO, and at the time of the pandemic in Taiwan, the vice premier he had a degree in epidemiology from Johns Hopkins. So anyway, when the COVID pandemic started, I was all over it because of my background, right? And I thought, oh, this is going to be a big one. This is not looking good. And I was screaming to close the borders and all that. Not that anybody listened, because nobody knows who I am.
I will never forget this. Yeah. The National Union of Students and a lot of leftists, their first reaction was to say closing the border to China was racist. It's so insane.
Let me just make a comment on that. Yeah. Flu viruses do not recognize borders, and they do not recognize races.
Yeah.
Have we cleared that up?
Yeah, that was amazing. I'll never forget that like there were people saying, and this was a big thing in America too. Everybody was saying, "Oh, if you want to close the border to China because of COVID, that's racist."
Yeah.
And that stupid debate probably cost the world.
Let's put it this way: if you had COVID and you were living with your nana, right? Would you isolate yourself from your nana?
Oh, well,
of course you would.
Yeah, I know.
Of course you would.
But no,
would that make you racist or ageist? No, it would not.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so
there was a lot of political insanity.
So anyway, that was the reason I started speaking publicly. And I remember I went on air during the lockdowns, and then Xiao Chen, who's the CCP's rep in Canberra. I don't call these guys ambassadors. They run on a very different system. Yeah. He brought the Canberra press pack into the embassy for a curated event.
Amazing.
At the end of when Australia was out of the sin bin for having the temerity to suggest that there be a inquiry into the origins of COVID. Of course, if you read Bethany Allen's book, she retraces the early stages of the pandemic, and I'll give you, in a nutshell, some doctors in Wuhan, Li Wenliang, Dr. Ifen, started raising the alarm. Dr. Ifen hasn't been seen since. Li Wenliang became a national hero on Chinese social media. Yeah. Before that, it was all shut down by the censors.
Because he tried to warn a group of doctors.
These were great people, and they were really concerned about the people in their community.
Yeah.
They were working ridiculous hours. They were exhausted. Yeah. They're absolute heroes. And what happened to them? They got taken down to the cop shop, the PSB, and they were told, shut up or else.
Yeah.
Right? So that came from top down. That was top down. That went right up to the head honcho.
It really is unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable.
It's unconscionable. And it gets worse. At the same time, they started scooping up PPE from all around the world through ethnic Chinese associations. And then they allowed Wuhan's a big city, got a big transport hub. They allowed people to jump on planes. Oh, of course, it was during Lunar New Year, right? So there's a lot of people moving around. And they allowed functions to go ahead, so that the virus got transmitted. And then they allowed people to get on planes and go overseas, while they were putting the whole province of Hubei, which is where
that's tens of millions of people. It's almost
they put the whole province in lockdown, which is
like almost the size of France.
And talk about the thing about racism, right?
Yeah.
The rest of China didn't want anything to do with Hubei.
Yeah.
Maybe they were racist against people from Hubei. Anyway,
well, there actually legitimately was a lot of prejudice from people from Hubei.
Of course,
they were
against.
They were suffered a lot of prejudice. Just what a story.
So anyway, I started talking about it.
Yeah.
I started getting a bit of visibility. As you know, time of the pandemic, the propaganda apparatus and its representatives around the world had a script, and they were promoting that script. And because they went so hard on lockdowns, and because China's a surveillance and censorship state, they were able to lock people down, so the virus was quarantined. It wasn't stopped; it was quarantined. So they were kind of saying, "Hey, look at us. We've done it great." A lot of people were dying in Europe. A lot of people were dying in America, and they're saying, "We're the example." In other words, our system works better. Our system, socialism, Chinese characteristics,
they treated the whole thing
works
as a
better than yours.
Propaganda.
And so the ambassador was saying, we've done a great job, blah, blah, blah. The next day I went on Sky News and I said, because, in China, people are always saying to you, we got an old saying. Well, other countries have everyone has old sayings, right? And I went on the next day and I said, we got an old saying in Australia too, which is, I didn't come down in the last rain shower, sport. Yeah. And needless to say, I wasn't exactly ingratiating myself with their mission in Canberra. And so somebody they came up with a fiendish plot to have a go at me. And it couldn't have come at a worse time, Drew, because I dropped out of life, put my career on ice, and I became a full-time carer for my mum who had dementia, breast cancer. She'd fractured her hip, and I had a bit of a taste of the aged care sector, and I couldn't leave mum in aged care. So I decided to keep looking after her at home. So on the 25th of January, 2023, I had booked for a guy from State Road Hospital Rentals to come to the house, put a hospital bed in the living room, and I had a tradie booked to come and look at the stove or something, both at 10:30. So I was expecting people. And so there's a knock on the door. I go to the door, and those two guys are there, and there's 4 Victoria Police detectives in civvies, guns in their holsters. And they go, even now as I retell this story, I still can't believe it, 2.5 years later. And they go, "Are you Andrew Phelan?" I go, "Yeah." And they didn't say, "Can I come in?" Bell. They didn't ask, "Can I come in?" They just went bajum right through the front door. Right. One of them swipes this phone out of my hand. Another one goes over to my desk, takes 2 laptops, some external drives. One of them's kind of looking at me in case I do a runner or something. I'm in my lounge room. And he goes, one pulls out a piece of paper and says, "You're under arrest on suspicion of threatening to kill." I've killed a few flies in my time, I must admit. Threatening to kill, cause serious injury, commit a sexual act, and/or stalking. And I was like, I don't know if people are old enough to remember different strokes, but the phrase, "what you're talking about, Willis," springs to mind. I was gobsmacked. I was like, what on earth is going on here? Like, I'd barely left the postcode in the last 5 years, caring for COVID and lockdowns and caring for mum. I'd barely been, I'd get like one night off a week where I'd go out with friends for dinner or so. I'd go to the football or something. But, I was basically stuck there. So, and then they mentioned the name of the complainant, and I'd never heard of her. I'd never met her, never heard of her. She had a Chinese surname, so that was a clue. That was my first clue. And then I asked the guys, and they were just doing their job, but although one of them was a little bit rambunctious, a little bit overzealous. But I said, "Where does she work?" They said, "We can't tell you." And so I was under arrest in my own living room. Amazing. 2 days before my mum was due to come home, because I'd been having physios going into aged care to try and get her moving again. I got her to the point where she could stand, and I thought I'll be able to cope, because I had times when she'd had a UTI or whatever, and she had trouble walking, and I had frames and things, but I managed. But I was stressed out of my brain. How am I going to look after mum when she comes home and everything? And then this happens. It couldn't have come at a worse time, because the day after the national holiday, Australia, I didn't have a phone. And and then mum came home. So I'm taken down to the police station, and they're asking me questions. I got fingerprinted and all that stuff. And by the way, you can see this. There was an episode of 60 Minutes, which Drew and I were in. And a couple other victims of this sort of thing. So you can Google that, 60 Minutes, Andrew Phelan or Drew Pablo, whatever. You can see that episode. It's had over 2 million views worldwide. So 20 minutes in, the light bulb's gone off. And I've gone, okay, now I figured out what's going on. I said to the police, because this is what happened to Drew Pablo, this guy. Right?
So it's really similar to what happened to me.
And dude, I'm forever grateful, because you're the pioneer. And if it hadn't happened to you, I would have been like, what is going on here?
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So I said to them, and they'd never heard of you.
For anybody who's watching, who might be new to this, like, what happened was essentially in 2022, I was protesting outside the London Chinese embassy, and they called up the police and said, "This guy is a terrorist who's threatened to bomb the embassy."
Terrorist. This guy'd be late for his own funeral.
And like the diplomatic protection unit came along, guns in their holsters, treated it so seriously, like I was a terror suspect. Put my hands behind my back, rear stack handcuff position. I later learned they only do that for 2% of arrests, like the most violent suspects. And then I was basically held incommunicado for 24 hours. Wasn't allowed to talk to a lawyer. Wasn't allowed to talk to the Australian embassy, because they thought that I had threatened the embassy. And it was basically based on a fake email, which is what happened to you. Someone did a fake email.
I got a confession to make. Don't be angry with me.
Yeah.
But when I found out about what happened to Drew, I burst out laughing, and that was my initial reaction. Because I thought, this guy's late for everything. I mean, like, he'd be late for his own funeral. I mean, him bombing an embassy.
Oh my god!
I burst out laughing, and then I realized
look at me. I'm petting a cute little puppy, and they think I'm a terrorist.
Well, anyway, he'd been cuffed and all that. And how old were you when that happened?
Oh, that was horrible. I was 23, I think.
Yeah, I would have been.
And it really did mess my life up. It's actually been, you know what? It's actually been almost 3 years exactly, I think, since that happened.
Well, I would have been.
I had to change my life so much.
I would have been shit scared. I mean, put yourself in that position.
Yeah, crazy.
So I said, I mentioned Drew's case to the police, and after a while, and then they read the emails to me. There was two. I don't remember what one said, but there was one. It was really, really technicolor offensive. You know, I won't go into the details, but it was, yeah. And for me, you know,
Well, you're looking after your dying mom.
Well, I have zero tolerance of you know, women being treated badly and stuff, and I've intervened 3 or 4 times, including physically a couple of times in Asia, once in Singapore, a couple of times in China, where women have been being physically manhandled in the street, and people are walking by and doing nothing. Like one time in Nanjing, I crash tackled this guy to the ground. He didn't know what hit him. He was on the ground. And then there was this Indian couple in Singapore outside of McDonald's, and he had this girl pinned in the corner. She was crying her eyes out. And when I grabbed him, I was like, yeah. And off he went. Good. Yeah. So I have zero tolerance for that. So one of my sisters was being harassed, and I got an intervention order put out on that guy. So I have zero tolerance for that. So to be accused of something like that was particularly
heinous.
Yeah. And you think there was this case going on in Australia at the time, a rape case, Higgins-Lehrman. It was dominating the news.
Huge, yeah.
And I just thought, you know how social media can blow up every which way.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, because what happened was 60 Minutes were doing a deep dive on the secret Chinese overseas police stations, and then they got wind of the fact that several Australians had been harassed. And you know, I become quite good friends with the Horton family, particularly
Matt Horton,
the parents of Matt Horton. So I don't know if you guys know the background, but Matt Horton was an Australian Olympian. He won the gold medal in the 400 freestyle
2016 Rio.
In the 2016 Rio Olympics.
Yeah.
And he made some comments about one of his competitors, being a drug cheat, which he was.
It was a Chinese swimmer. And, and he was a drug cheat.
He got busted a couple of times, but the family have been super understanding, because they know that it's not Swin and his mum, that, you know, it was the system that tries to. You know what's funny? Like,
Mac is not political at all. He's not. He never set out to be a China critic or anything.
No.
Literally just a swimmer.
He's an outstanding young guy. I've only met him once. I know his parents pretty well.
But
he's a great young guy. Yeah, he's a great swimmer. In fact, when I met him, because I won a bronze in the 400 free at the Asian Masters. Right. I showed him the picture. I got the medal around my neck.
By the way, there's a comment by Andrew Hennessy. You should read that.
You can't. Yeah, Horton he is a legend.
Oh no, the one I was in Shanghai in January 2020.
Oh, I was in Shanghai in January 2020. And things were already getting weird. Wow. The Australian intelligence agency should have had time to prepare. Not sure why they took so long to close. Yeah,
that's a good point. Good point.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah, bit slow. Yeah. So I showed him this picture of I just won a bronze medal. Yeah. It looks like a gold. It's actually a bronze. Yeah. And first time I met him, I'm like, dude, top this.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, his gold in the Olympics tops my bronze in the Asian Masters. But anyway. So I started talking. That's why they went after me. But anyway, the police came back 2 days later. Mum was home. She was in a hospital bed in the living room, and two of the police rocked up. The guy that led his name was Alex. The guy that led the kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? The arrest? Yeah, the raid, whatever. The raid. And because they stopped, they said you can stop anytime and get a lawyer. And plenty of my friends are lawyers, but they're all commercial lawyers. Yeah. I don't know any criminal lawyer. I've never had the need for a criminal lawyer. But they just rocked up a couple of days later, the day after Australia Day, with all my devices, because they were looking for Proton Mail. They couldn't find it because I never had one. And
Proton mail, that's what they did to me.
yeah,
Exact
exactly,
same thing.
same dirty trick. And I
because
invited.
you hide the IP address, you can't ever trace it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm not a cyber security guy or anything, but
Yeah.
I said, come on in, and they said, oh, we don't want to embarrass you in front of your mum. And I said, her dementia was pretty advanced, and I thought, I said, don't worry, she won't know what's going on. And I invited them in, and I introduced them. One of them's name was Jack, and I said, oh, my mum has a grandson called Jack. And they came over to my desk, and we had a nice chat. I think they were deeply embarrassed about what had happened, the fact that they'd fallen for the newest trick in the book.
Yeah.
But as Senator Patterson said in Senate estimates, they're using our resources against us. It's very clever. It's very insidious. But to do it offshore, it doesn't cost any money.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. It was a horrible experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say behind losing my parents, it was the worst experience of my life.
Oh,
but you know what, Drewski?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, mate. These things, if they think that this is, going to intimidate us, or we're going to stop telling the truth, that ain't happening.
No, that was my experience too. Like when this happened to me, it made me even more of an opponent of them.
Yeah, I remember me joking that the consul general in Brisbane at the time, Xu Jie, who came from a public security background, I said he's now been demoted back in China for creating the Frankenstein that is Drew Pavlu.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is,
boy, did that backfire.
Well, the funny thing is, I literally only have a following today because of what they did all those years back.
So Drew and I would like to thank the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much.
Well said. But it was pretty bad, and even when the bomb threat thing happened to me, like I came back to Australia, they kept on doing it to me in Australia. Did it to my mom as well. Did it to my brother. So that's why I was in the same situation.
But you know what, mate? It took a lot of guts to come out and tell I mentioned the Brittany Higgins Lehrman thing.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, my mum's terminally ill. Life's pretty hard already. What if this thing blows up on the socials and people go, did he actually do that? Which I think is the whole point of the exercise.
Exactly.
And then I thought about it, and I slept on it, and I tossed and turned for a week, and 60 minutes wouldn't really take no for an answer. And Senator Patterson said,
really
he wanted,
absolutely.
And they've got form. They've done some very good work on the what I call the China Challenge.
I've done a couple
I trusted them, and they came to the house. They met they were fantastic. They were great. Thank you to Tara Brown and Laura Sparks and the other two guys. Great. They were awesome. Yeah, and they really did good. I'm glad I trusted them, but I had to take a chance. But the night, I remember during the week, I was so stressed out by the whole thing. I thought I'll watch a movie just to, clear my head. And I watched this movie I can't remember what it's called. It's on the siege of Benghazi.
I know the movie.
It's a good movie. If you haven't seen it. But I thought these guys, the Marines at the consulate in Libya, they were totally surrounded, like 100 to 1. And I thought, shit, that's grace under pressure. That's courage. And then I thought about all the diggers that had taken a bullet for our country. Yeah. And we take that for granted. Yeah. All those who have gone before us. And I thought, you know what, this is as much about defending the values, the things that we hold dear, our liberty, the rule of law, all these things. And I thought, you know what, I kind of owe it to them. And I owe it to the Australian public to share my story so that people are better educated about these sorts of, as you call them, mafia tactics, which is what they are.
Really are. Yeah, absolutely. So, how were you ultimately cleared? Tell the viewers how you were ultimately cleared on that one.
I wasn't charged.
Yeah.
So I wasn't. I didn't
actually, same with me on the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever was formally charged.
I never had to be cleared because I was never charged. Yeah. And like I said, when the police came home back to my place, and I invited them in and everything, we had a pleasant chat. I think they felt, they didn't want me to talk about it publicly, which I don't get, because I think everybody needs to understand these things. And I offered to be involved in some briefing or training for the police and stuff. No. They're not interested in that either.
I had a similar experience with the AFP. They brought me in 2023, and they said, we have intercepted a genuine, we intercepted a foreign interference plot to find your address in Australia and harm you, and then we made raids against this individual's address. And they didn't tell me it was China, but it was very obviously China because Vicky Xu had received the exact same thing at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And they had the same thing. They were like, don't talk about it. And they put so much pressure on me not to talk about it. And I think it's horrible because then it's like, then it lets them get away with it.
Let me answer Dodo. Am I banned from China? Oh, sorry. Hello.
Val,
Am I banned from China?
probably.
Are you banned from China?
Val.
Um,
She's very friendly.
she's very friendly. I've been advised. I went to see Peter Khalil, MP, the Labor
He's
MP.
a great guy.
He was
Really
he's a
good.
nice guy. He's on. I don't think he knew a whole lot about this stuff, but he where was she going?
Okay. What are you doing, Val?
All right, you
Val?
pass the parcel.
Pass
He was the chair of the
gonna
National Security Committee at the time, and he said, "Don't go to China." I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I know a lot of other people around the world have been targeted in this way. Like I met Jimmy Lai's son. Jimmy Lai's lawyers have been targeted with this fake email stuff.
Yeah.
Kevin Carricker at Monash University, Luke de Pulford, who founded IPAC, the
Kevin
Parliamentary,
Kevin
Yam, Ted Hui, who we've just given.
She's gonna try to steal your food. Your clothes.
Can you? No, she's okay.
Oh, okay.
Dog's about to chew my t-shirt over there.
Guys, leave a like on the stream, by the way. We've got 15 watching live on YouTube and a couple dozen watching live on Twitter. If you're watching, leave a like. It helps us reach more people. Very important. Okay.
Yeah.
Go back.
So, yeah, that was all fun and games. Whew. But anyway, so I still go on Sky News. You know, they have me back, and I tend to go on in the mornings these days. So I still do commentary. So the idea to shut us up did not work. Long live free speech and democracy.
Yeah, well said. The 3 represents long live.
So what's happening now, Drew? We've got this funky case going on in Sydney.
This is really funny. We're gonna bring this up. I'm gonna bring this up on the screen because we want to talk about some current China news in Australia. And this one is just like hilarious. It's so unhinged and crazy. So I'm gonna bring this up on the screen.
Reminds me a little bit of the Red Bull case in Bangkok.
So essentially, do you want to give the rundown?
So I was a bit late to this because
I'll try to see if we can get a YouTube video on it.
Okay.
Let's see. Len Yang.
Yeah. Wrecked Rolls Royce and a mystery.
I'll for the viewers because it's actually fascinating. The case is just amazing.
So, it is the Sydney car crash that has just about all of China talking.
Sure, let us know.
Lan Yang was allegedly drunk when she smashed her Rolls Royce.
Now she's become a Chinese.
Okay.
It is the Sydney car crash that has just about all of China talking. Lan Yang was allegedly drunk when she smashed her Rolls Royce.
Now she's become a Chinese social media sensation with fans turning up to her court appearance today.
The viewers.
They call her the mystery trillionaire, drawing crowds to court. Sydney's Chinese community desperate to catch a glimpse of Lan Yang.
It was too crowded.
I agree with
upstairs.
that's why
Most of us didn't even enter the courtroom.
The 23-year-old becoming an internet sensation after she crashed her $1 million Rolls Royce in Rose Bay, allegedly while drunk. The crash injuring another 12-year-old becoming an internet sensation.
It was too crowded upstairs, and most of us didn't even enter the courtroom.
The 23-year-old becoming an internet sensation after she crashed her $1 million Rolls Royce in Rose Bay, alleged sensation.
That was 3:30 in the morning.
You know the guy nearly died?
Yeah.
So
it was a high-speed head-on collision at 3:30 in the morning.
So she had no damage to her whatsoever. She totaled her $1.5 million Rolls Royce, but she nearly killed this guy. He had a ruptured abdomen, a broken spine,
very banged up.
Like he came really close to death.
Yeah.
After she crashed her $1 million Rolls Royce in Rose Bay, allegedly while drunk, the crash injuring another driver.
We can't see the
You can't really read it.
No, go back a tiny little bit. Let's see if we can see that license plate.
Royce in Rose Bay, allegedly while drunk.
There we go. IN. Okay.
And then
NCN China.
85K.
Is that 85K? Is it?
I think so. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And 85K. Well, 8's a lucky number in Chinese language. CN is usually China.
Yeah, well, CN is China, obviously.
Yeah, N. I wonder what the N means.
So she walked away from this because she was in a fucking armored Rolls Royce worth $1.5 million. And this is what people are wondering. She's 23 years old. Why the fuck does she have this armored Rolls Royce worth $1.5 million?
She used to do overtime at the Chenmen KFC.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Money.
Yeah, she's just hard worker, of course.
Yeah.
This is what I don't like. I don't like the fact that the princelings come to Australia with no respect for this country and they treat it like a strip mine.
It wasn't. So Desmond Shum, who's a mate of mine who lives in Oxford, wrote a book called Red Roulette.
Crash injuring.
Sorry, there's a question. Aldingo says, "Can you answer my question about the Proton again? You have the video playing too loud." Okay. Can you explain that a bit quickly?
Would you want to explain it?
Essentially, Proton Mail is a service. A lot of people in shady professions use it. It basically scrambles the IP address when you create a new email address. So you can never trace where these Proton Mails are from. And essentially, they created a fake Proton Mail in my name. They created a fake Proton Mail in Andrew's name. A number of our friends as well, Kevin Carrico at the University of Monash University, Luke de Pulford in Britain. A number of China critics around the world got this. And essentially, they would just do bomb threats and death threats in our names.
We're not China critics, by the way.
We're critics of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, of its more offensive things that it does, and just raise awareness. So there's a big conversation. People that raise these things.
I do have to say, Moosaka says it's armored. Look, I don't know whether it's armored. All I know is this thing is built like a tank.
I mean, who knows it's armored? Yeah, we must not speculate. I doubt it wouldn't be armored. There's no way.
That said, though,
that's my take.
It is built like a tank, though. She walked away. She walked away from the scene, whereas the guy almost died.
It's a roller, but you're speculating now. Let's leave that to the experts.
True.
So there's this conversation. We mentioned it before.
Good question by Andrew.
People often get called China hawks.
Yeah.
A hawk is a bird of prey. It's got sharp beak and talons. It swoops down.
It's a term of abuse.
It swoops down on cute furry animals, right?
Yeah.
It's an apex predator. And people that, I think people that stand up for democracy, human rights, the rule of law, a sense of justice, ought not be termed hawks. I think what we are is we're realists. I think you can have a PRC realists and PRC fantasists, as my friend Philip said, who, people that want to just quarantine all the stuff, all the nasty stuff, and pretend we've got life as normal. And I think in Australia, we hear the Prime Minister often say, we'll cooperate where we can, disagree where we must.
I hate that,
So on his recent trip, I was watching CGTN because I pull stuff from all different places. I follow a lot of different people. I had a great network in the space. I've got about a dozen subscriptions. I read about a dozen articles a day, and I look at the propaganda and see what they're putting out. And CGTN translated, they said we'd shelve our differences. So what that means is we'll take anything that's uncomfortable. And if you're in business, you can be totally amoral. You don't care whether the product comes from a sweatshop or is made by slave labor or pollutes the atmosphere or whatever. You can say we're going to shelve our differences. You put that stuff in quarantine and you get on with life as normal. And I think, no, you got to have standards. You got to say, well, I'm importing this product. Was it made ethically, or were the laborers treated like slaves? Were they treated like shit? Because I don't want to buy. I'd rather pay $20 for a t-shirt that was made ethically than $5 for a t-shirt that wasn't. And given that the world is being flooded with junk from Temu and Shein, and nobody's asking, can I go to the point of origin and audit? We had a great documentary once again on 60 Minutes, but it was done by Isabel Jung, who's a terrific journalist who was very courageous. She went into Xinjiang undercover, and she went to a factory in I think it was in Dongguan in Guangdong province that was making Barbie dolls, because the Barbie movie was such a big hit, and they've got all these different Barbies now. And she went into the factory. Well, they had, I don't think she herself went in, but they had hidden cameras, and they saw the working conditions that these people were making these toys, and they were getting burned. They weren't getting proper lunch breaks. It was dangerous. It was really low paid. And I think what's happening in the Chinese economy, in the PRC economy right now, is that they're doubling down on making stuff, particularly things like EVs.
It's to try to get out of the housing crash.
EVs and solar panel stuff. Well, housing was 40% of the economy.
Yeah.
And the subprime crisis in the US in 2008, in China, it's about 7 times that scale. Think of that. And the people that invested, they're not getting their money back. There's going to be no bailout.
My God.
And China's making, say, if you look at automobiles, for example, they're making twice the capacity that they can absorb. They're exporting 6 million units a year. It's insane. And they're going into markets like Latin America, Southeast Asia, here in Australia, and so on. They're making too much stuff. And
they're just dumping it.
They are dumping it. And there's no social welfare network and so on. So you've got a whole lot of people. I would say you're at about half the population. This got Li Chang's predecessor into hot water with Xi Jinping, talking about 600 million people that are on very low incomes.
Less than $140 per month.
Yeah. And those people, a lot of those people, and of course, a lot of people that in Australia, we had this thing through the COVID pandemic called JobKeeper. So people got paid if they couldn't go to work so that they could buy groceries for their kids. There was nothing like that in China. So desperate people, the Chinese people are hardworking, entrepreneurial, people that started their own businesses. They would go and try and borrow money and then they wouldn't be able to pay it back. And so we've seen, I see a lot of, PRC society is really fraying at the edges. A lot of people are doing it really tough. There were demonstrations outside of one of the Timu office where people hadn't been paid their salaries, and of course the government brings in the People's Armed Police and the Gong'an to shut these brush fires, to shut them down, these spot fires, to shut them down. I think a lot of people are doing it really, really tough in China as the economy slows. Don't pay any attention to the official GDP numbers when they say we've grown at 5%.
Well, Li Keqiang said that himself. He said that he couldn't trust the GDP numbers, so he would just look at things like concrete production, like actual outputs.
And that's another point too. Is they have a purchasing production managers index and so on. Other ways to measure the economy. Historically, China, unlike the US or Australia, where a big portion of federal government revenue comes from income tax, in China it's historically come from the provinces selling real estate to developers as a way of raising revenue, and that given the real estate market is all dried up, where does the revenue come from? So China's got a massive sovereign deficit and debt problem.
Is that like 250% of GDP or something crazy?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Tianjin is so China's got 4 cities that have provincial province status: Tianjin, Beijing, Shanghai, and Chongqing. And Tianjin's heavily in debt. There's a skyscraper there that would have been one of the tallest buildings in China and in the world. That's just a sarcophagus. It's a skeleton. They haven't got the money to finish it. They haven't got the money to pull it down. You don't see that on the YouTube propaganda channels about China.
Great
but
point.
And prostitution, which has always been ubiquitous in China, is now going through the roof because that's how desperate times are, which is horrible. So yeah, it's a scary period, and my heart goes out to all those people that invested their savings in a flat, and then the flat wasn't finished, and they're in a desperate situation.
That is the worst situation where there's a lot of cases where the building is literally half finished and there's nothing they can do, and they put their life savings.
Yeah, exactly right. So back to our bingle in Rose Bay. What's going on here? So
amazing.
We had when I was living in Singapore, we had a guy from China driving a Ferrari. He had a Japanese friend of his in the car, and he speared into this taxi. It was a Malay taxi driver. The Malay taxi driver, who had a family to support, was killed instantly.
Oh my God.
I think everyone involved was killed, and that was on the evening news. There was a case.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so the princelings and also relatives, what Desmond Shum called red royalty, the currency of navigating the elite circles in China depends on who's your daddy, who's your granddaddy. Xi Jinping's a classic example, right? And so, I think it was his brother-in-law, if I'm not mistaken, sort of dropped about 20-something million at Crown Casino in Melbourne.
What a story.
Yeah.
So it's his cousin. So
a cousin, is it?
So Xi Jinping's cousin,
Xi
Jinping's cousin was one of the biggest high rollers at Crown Casino Melbourne.
Right.
And literally put tens of millions of dollars through the casino. And
he's a whale.
Yeah, and they would fly him in on a private jet. The police stopped him in a private jet on the Gold Coast because they were suspecting money laundering.
Yeah.
He was involved in some kind of massive brothel empire in Melbourne or something like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know whether this guy still lives in Melbourne, but it was highly embarrassing for the Xi family. And also, it basically probably provided the impetus for the Australian government to properly crack down on Crown Casino and the money laundering and stuff like that. because they did put in a lot harsher regulations.
Right.
Which was needed because these were just massive money laundering.
It's funny. It's one thing to talk about these things, but then it's another thing for action to happen. I'll give you an example. Yeah. So I suspected there was a company here called Long River Forex or Long River Capital. The Yangtze in Chinese is called the Changjiang or Long River, one of the world's longest rivers, of course. And so this organization had set up shop here. They were doing Forex, and straight away I thought these guys are getting a lot of dirty money from out of China and getting it out of the country, which lots of people have been trying to do ever since Xi Jinping came to power.
And remember, the capital controls are $50,000.
Correct. So
it's a really small amount.
They try and do it every other way. And so there was this guy that was an ex-immigration minister in Australia, this guy called Gary Hardgrave.
Oh, my God. Yeah. And he was a liberal. He was a right winger.
And he was he was liberal. I don't know if he was a right winger. I don't know him real well. But
he was part of the centre-right party.
I was out of the country for such a long time. But he was a commentator. He's a media commentator in Queensland.
That's a funny story.
Yeah.
So what happened is I would go to Sunnybank and I saw this. It was called Changjiang Currency Exchange.
That's the one.
And I would walk past Changjiang Currency Exchange, and they'd have a big TV with Gary Hardgrave on it.
There you go.
And it would say Gary Hardgrave, former minister of the Crown or whatever. And then he'd be going, "You want to put your money in Changjiang because I see it's such a trustworthy thing." And I'm thinking to myself, I saw this like a year before it got raided, and I said, "What the hell is going on here?"
So I said,
because you shouldn't be able to trade on your past.
Yeah, I know.
He was advertising for a money laundering business essentially, and he was using his reputation as a former minister of the government.
Yeah,
I think he was an immigration minister.
He was an immigration minister.
He was almost trying. What he was doing, I actually feel bad for there would have been a lot of ordinary Chinese people who got caught up in this, where he was basically saying, like, "Oh, you can put your money in this because I'm a minister. I'm a former immigrant." That's what it was like.
That's the point of the exercise, right? And since then, Gary's gone on to
and said, "I didn't know about it."
He's been on the board of some dodgy NDIS provider. Do you know about that one?
He's a disaster. But you know, he was literally a director of Changjiang.
Yeah. So he was doing.
How did he not get in trouble?
He was doing YouTube ads for them, and he was on the board, and he'd be like, "Ni hao, wo shu." It was like instead of wo shu, he was like wo shu, Gary Hardgrave, and then he'd go. When I was immigration minister, I always tried to do the right thing by the Australia-China relationship. So he's what's known in the trade as a useful idiot for money, right?
And he just said that he didn't know what happened. And it was billions of dollars.
My point was, Drew, that I told people, Sky, that to let this guy know that he would be unwittingly, I'm sure it was unwitting, he'd be unwittingly facilitating
so bad
money laundering, dirty money, right? And,
you know what's so fun?
Later on, hang on a sec. Later on, I asked, was that advice passed on? I won't say who was involved, but I'll say, was that advice passed on? And the response back was no. And my point is, there's no point talking in a vacuum about all this stuff unless you're taking action. So fast forward 12 months, and then it's on the front page of every newspaper. It's on all the TV networks.
Yeah.
There's AFP and ASIO people going to big mansions and confiscating cars and stuff.
50
million.
It
was the biggest money laundering case in Australian history.
It was 300 police. 300 police were involved in simultaneous raids.
There's one of the houses in Baltimore.
And
Rolex watches.
And this is him. I couldn't believe it.
The whole 9 yards.
You know what's so funny?
The Honourable Gary Hardgrave.
But you know what's so funny?
Honourable.
So I remember, I swear to God, I was walking just at Sunnybank. I was getting an ice cream with my mates or whatever. And I walked past the Changjiang Currency Exchange and I saw the TV with him on it. And I said, what the fuck's this? And I said, this looks really dodgy. And then I'm not even kidding. 12 months later, I'm reading the news and I'm like, oh my God.
Can I answer El Dingo's question?
Yeah.
Hey, Andrew, what do you think about someone having the opportunity to work as an editor for China Daily in Beijing? Have to assume you're getting spied on. When aren't you, in any case, to be fair? Pros and cons. That pros and cons, I'll tell you, El Dingo, there's no pros.
Yeah.
for me, and I knew some people that went and worked for the China Daily a year after Tiananmen Square. Hello. But at any point, the idea of working for state-run media in China, for me, has always been and remains a complete non-starter.
Well, you're working for the Communist Party.
Yeah, you're working for them. It's like you sign your salt. It's a Faustian pact.
You are directly working for the Communist Party.
You've got to be really desperate or an absolute loser. Lila Farley does a great way of taking the piss out of the people that do that. rent themselves out. People like Cyrus Jansen and what's that guy? Andy Borum.
Disaster.
A Kiwi in New Zealand. He's a disgrace.
He's a disgrace.
They're an absolute disgrace.
How funny is this though? Like, I swear to God, I was walking past and I said, "What the hell is this? This looks so dodgy." Because I just saw this, like, a former minister just like spruiking a currency exchange. I'm like, what the fuck's that? Why would any former minister be spruiking a currency exchange?
Well, we've had other cases.
Then 12 months later, there's 300 police.
We've had other cases. As a rule of thumb, if an ex-politician is doing consulting work for a PRC entity,
oh my God,
it's sketchy. So there's a hall of infamy, and you've got Andrew Robb, the former my local MP, who signed up on an $800,000 a year consulting job for Land Bridge.
Oh, that one's a disaster
the
too.
PRC entity that's friendly with the PLA, and their CEO is friendly with Xi Jinping, and they took out a 99-year lease on our one and only North Coast port, the Port of Darwin.
Disaster.
Without informing our US allies, who were not too chuffed about it. That's something maybe we should talk about.
Yeah,
what's going to happen to Darwin?
I think Albo said that he's going to nationalise again.
So
Andrew Robb, $880,000 China job as soon as he left Parliament.
Nice work if you can get it.
So the reason they were, I just realised the reason they were asking about China.
What about Cheng Lei?
But I think the reason why they're asking, I think, is because she did work for China Daily.
Cheng Lei?
Yeah.
Cheng Lei didn't work for China
Daily. It was CGTN, right?
She took a gig with CGTN, yeah.
So it was state media.
So
look, I know there are people in the dissident community who are still upset about that.
Well, I met Cheng Lei very briefly. I don't really know her, and I got to admit that has always been a question for me, because a couple of other young Aussie journos, Annalise Nielsen, who went to Orca Sky, she went up there.
Belle?
Hey, stop chewing my t-shirt.
It's okay. I'll do you want to grab it off her?
Yeah, can you?
Oh, okay. Oh my God.
Okay, it's a t-shirt. It's not,
But she'll try it.
So we got a wardrobe malfunction. Well, actually, yeah, my t-shirt is being chewed as we speak.
Dog. Where is she?
I think that.
Can you grab it off her?
Yeah, I'll try. Whoop. What are you doing? There you go. All right.
So silly. Oh, Val, that's very cheap.
T-shirt rescued.
Oh, sorry. It's
all good.
Destroyed within like a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might make a nice memento. I could clean it and it'll have some tooth marks in it.
The time Drew's dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Where were we? We're rambling on.
Working for Chinese.
So Annalise Nielsen went up there, and then there was a girl from Channel 7, Emily Angwin, and I think she got bored with the reporting on local crime, and I'm going international, and she went up there, and I dropped her a note and said, "You realize you're working for a CCP propaganda apparatus?" And she's like, "I absolutely reject xenophobia." Okay, well, I don't think you quite get my point. Anyway, credit to her. She sort of figured it out pretty quickly. When she was being used as a robot, having to read this thing.
About how Xinjiang is a happy place.
I check out CGTN every once in a while for a laugh, and I can almost write the scripts for them.
Yeah, it's so easy. Like,
yeah.
It's I could write them in my sleep.
You know what? That's a really good point, because I look at what China's doing all around the world, and I read a lot. So it's not difficult to predict things. You see patterns emerge.
Oh, they've got the same script all the time.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So when I came back to Australia, I started volunteering my time for the ABC, and I fell out with them for a number of reasons. Like one of them was
eating.
No.
I just want to make sure she doesn't eat your fucking clothes.
Eating my shoe.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that.
But so I started doing stuff for the ABC. They got this guy, Chen Hong. So Chen Hong, Google him, Professor Chen Hong.
Yeah.
He's a professor at China Shifan Daxue, China in Shanghai, China East Normal University in Shanghai, which means it's a teaching university.
Is he the guy who did the PhD on Patrick White?
Bingo.
Oh yeah, he's a good one. I've got a Patrick White book in my bookshelf.
He didn't do a PhD. He translated Fringe of Leaves. Which by the way, viewers, won a Nobel Prize.
I think he translated. I've got the I think he translated David Marr's book on Patrick White, and I think I've got that book in here.
Oh, okay. We certainly translated Fringe of Leaves, but anyway, had his picture taken with Bob Hawke and all that. So I don't know whether he willingly signed up to the MSS, but he's certainly working for them, because if they're not, to be fair to him, if they tap you on the shoulder and say you're going to do this, pretty hard to say no.
Yeah, you can't say no. Right?
But he seems to have taken it up with gusto. But
you know what's so funny? Do you remember at the height of all this, like the hysteria of people like David Brophy going like, oh, how dare you arrest Chinese spies in Australia? It's xenophobia. Like these people are mentally ill. Like we literally had this guy, David Brophy, who's now one of the biggest leaders of the Palestine protest at the University of Sydney.
Is that right? Gosh.
And he's like a Trotskyist or whatever. And he wrote this big book about like the China panic. And he was a massive critic of me. And I still swear to God, like at the height of all this, literally, like he would literally say, how dare you? When that guy in particular got deported from Australia.
I don't know. Look,
he made this big thing like, how dare you expel this literal Chinese spy?
I mean, back to Chen Hong. So he goes on the ABC. He came down here like 5 years ago or something on what I like to call the warning tour. And the template that he was authorized to use went like this. It went, wouldn't it be a pity if something unfortunate were to happen to a Royal Australian naval vessel in the South China Sea? Wouldn't it be a pity? Yeah, it would be a pity. He comes down to my country and he threatens to send 200 or 300 of my countrymen and women to a watery grave in international waters.
Deport straight away.
So I said to the ABC, why are you giving this guy a platform?
Yeah.
You know? And then in my reading, South China Sea, a great book by Bill Hayton, he talks about how Fu Ying, he also wrote the Invention of China. Is
great book. I've got it right here.
That's a great book. That's great. That's a great book. It explains how modern China, you know, Chinese the young leaders. Yeah. And there was nothing wrong with them. I mean, who wants foreigners to be ruling bits of their country? I totally get it.
Yeah.
You know, and
you know what?
Good on them.
You know what pissed off the Chinese government so much?
What?
You know Mao Zedong's famous speech where when he founded the People's Republic of China, he said the Chinese people have stood up. Yeah. Which, to be fair, I hate Mao, but it was a good line, right? It's a cool line. I have to admit.
Yeah.
So when Malcolm Turnbull did the foreign interference legislation, he said the Australian people have stood up, and they were so offended. They were so angry. But to be fair, it's a good line. It's a great
Turnbull
line.
was trying to show off his Mando, by the way. He speak a little bit of Mando.
But it was a good line. It was a very cool line.
So Fu Ying, who used to be ambassador to Australia, ambassador to the UK, pretty high up in the Chinese Foreign Ministry. So she's in London at the time as the rep for the UK, and she goes to BP's office and she says, "You know what?" To the CEO, she says, "I really like BP. Do you have a favorite oil company?" I mean, I don't, but no, I really like BP. She says, "But wouldn't it be a pity if something unfortunate were to happen to BP crew drilling off the coast of Vietnam?"
Mental.
You know, you connect the dots. It's not that difficult. You connect the dots.
Yeah, it literally is Godfather tactics.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what's a great line? This is another great line. Somebody asked Frank Dicotta, great historian, by the way. He wrote this whole series on China.
He is great.
Frank Dicotta, he's great. And they asked Frank Dicotta, they were like, what books should you read to understand the Chinese Communist Party? He said, no, just watch The Sopranos. Because it's such a good line. It's such a good line, because they really do operate like a...
I think one of the other reasons they had a go at me was I quoted a Harvard study that talked about the mafia-style tendencies of state-owned enterprises.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to say it myself. I didn't want to wake up with a horse's head in my bed, but you know.
But it's true.
And then I can't remember her name. She was the professor at the Party School, and she defected, lives in exile in the. Yeah.
She's a great writer. I don't know her name, but she's a great writer.
I can't remember. But,
I've got her name, but I've read her essay.
If you know who I'm talking about, drop a note.
She wrote for Foreign Affairs magazine. It was a really good one.
She wrote a great essay, and she said that she continuing his rule by. I mean, one of the great things that Deng Xiaoping did was he had term limits on the leader because, you know, otherwise, you know, it was like you had to wait till the emperor died, and there was like a big earthquake like Tangshan in 1976. Chairman Mao died, you know. And so he introduced 2 5-year term limits. Of course, she unraveled that.
This is
like Putin did.
The Death of Mao, and it's about the Tangshan earthquake and the death of Mao by
Right,
James Harper, who wrote for Chinese state media for many years.
I didn't know he wrote for Yeah. Anyway,
but he now works for FP, Foreign Policy. He's a good guy.
Yeah. So I fell out with the ABC. And where were we going, Drew?
There's so many good stories.
Many good stories.
I forgot about like the guy who translated Patrick White's novels.
Chen Hong.
All these guys over the
Anyway, they wouldn't listen. The ABC wouldn't listen to me. You know, I got a friend of mine. I better not go there. I don't want. She's got a family in China. I don't want to endanger her. I must always remember that. There are a couple other examples. A mate of mine, Adam Gilmore. I wanted to get him some exposure on the ABC. They weren't interested. I was like, he started a space company. I don't know if you guys know.
Oh, cool guy.
But
they unfortunately didn't have a good launch recently.
No. They for those of you who don't know, Gilmore Space is now Australia's biggest space company. and they had a rocket that went up a couple of weeks ago. It got 14 seconds in the air before it crashed. But Adam was saying to me before he would have been happy with 10. And FYI, 70% of first term. Look at SpaceX.
SpaceX has
and they got the head of aerospace. They hired him from SpaceX.
Right.
So that was up in the air for 14 seconds, but 70% of first goes failed. 70%, right? So as they say in Israel, you're nobody until you failed, right? I mean, and Musk would say, you're not failing enough. You're not taking enough risk.
That's literally why SpaceX did so well.
But the ABC wouldn't touch him, and I was pulling my hair out. I was like, how about having our own Elon Musk right here to inspire kids in school to study STEM, to stick with STEM, and dream big, so it can be done here. But they wouldn't touch it. So I was really...
It's just hard. It's very hard because the Australian media is very myopic.
The Australian media, they went up to China with Albo a month or so ago. Not one of them has a China-Asia background. Not one of them speaks an Asian language.
What did you make of the recent trip? I loved how he had to go to Chengdu as well, right? He had to do the 4 days. He couldn't just do a 2-day tour. Had to be 4 days.
I think it was more than that, actually. So Shanghai, Beijing. So
he even made sure to go to Chengdu.
So the media reported. So he had an hour with the emperor, and an hour with the emperor. I mean, Xi Jinping is going to read from a prepared script.
You can actually watch it.
He's not going off his.
No, I watched this. Xi Jinping
goes,
we are very happy with the relationship with Australia. Yeah.
So it's funny, actually. Xi Jinping was at a Shanghai Cooperation meeting in Central Asia. I think it was Kazakhstan. Might have been Uzbekistan. And somebody asked him a question, God forbid, right? And he responded. He said, he said, I haven't prepared those materials. He was taken off guard and he didn't know what to do.
It actually is so scripted, eh?
Things are often super scripted.
So, what's interesting? So Kevin Rudd's book on Xi Jinping.
Who?
I like Kevin Rudd.
No. Who's the other guy? There you go. We'll get there.
But good book. I liked it. I saw it was criticized.
Did you read the whole thing?
I've read about half of it. I want to read the whole thing. It's it's a bit turgid because it essentially is just literally an analysis of like everything that's ever been published in Xi Jinping's name. And the reality is it's never really written by Xi Jinping. It's written by these.
Of course it is.
It's who's the number 5 in the
Wang Hunin.
Yeah, it's written by him, Wang Hunin, and it's written by they've got like whole teams of ideological cadres, right?
Oh, well, Wang Hunin, that's a point worth digressing on.
Yeah, he's an interesting figure.
Wang Hunin is the spiritual guide. He's a member of the standing committee of the Politburo, which is currently only 7, all men, of course.
Yeah, it's like the 7 immortals, basically.
But he survived. I think he was around in the Jiang Zemin. Yeah, he's gone through the Jiang Zemin era, the Hu Jintao era, and he's still there.
They kept him for everything
as a spiritual guide under Xi Jinping.
He's like the top ideologue.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, he wrote a book called America Against America.
Yeah.
He spent time in the US as a young guy. And we know that the CCP has been clandestinely providing funding for some organizations like these Marxist socialist organizations like Black Lives Matter and Code Pink.
Code Pink was the one I was going to mention. Yeah.
Code Pink. What's that dude's name?
I know you're talking. There's a big billionaire in America.
Singh or something.
Singham, I think his name is.
Singham. That's right.
Yeah, Singham.
Yeah, and his kooky wife.
And he funds like people like Code Pink.
They're all about peace. They're all about peace.
He's married to the co-founder of Code Pink, and
they work together.
Yeah, and it's like full tankified, and it's suspected that he funds people like.
So they're all about peace, right?
Kevin Roy Singham, I think.
That's the guy. Yeah. So they're all about peace. So they're anti. The West, the US, they're warmongers, right? But they never have anything to say about the size.
Neville Roy Singham.
There you go. They never have anything to say about the size, speed, and scale of China's military buildup.
So he sold some kind of IT consulting company for $785 million. And then he's basically just devoted his entire fortune to promoting Maoism around the world. And it's just actually amazing because, like, how does this guy do it? Like, how do you have $785 million to be a fucking Maoist? It's amazing. But
let me let you in on a little secret, Drew.
Yeah.
The CCP elites, they're not about communism. In China, the locals, the Laobaixing, they are not fooled by state propaganda. You talk to any taxi driver in Beijing, and they'll always tell you, they say, we are a feudal society. And I think now it's just, you've got another emperor.
It's
red royalty.
It's interesting because Rudd's thesis is essentially that Xi Jinping is a...
Who?
Xi Jinping.
Thank you.
But Rudd's
thesis
is essentially that he's a Marxist nationalist. And you know what's a more polite way of... That's a more polite way of saying national socialist, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Basically, a Marxist nationalist is a national socialist.
Where I take... I think Rudd is a very good China boffin. He's a very bright guy.
No, I think so.
I think where he's weak, and I think this is where there's a lot of weakness among academia and journalism, is they've never been in what I like to call the trenches of commerce. So look, to be fair to him, he actually did a couple years, I think, before he got elected as an MP. So after he left DFAT, it was after he left working for Peter Beattie, I think it was. Okay.
No, he was like the chief of staff for Wayne Goss, and then I think there was like a 1 or 2 year period where he was a management consultant for China.
Yeah, that's not.
But,
I tell you who doesn't get included in having real commercial experience: lawyers, banks, and consultants, because they advise, they set things up, they facilitate deals. But when all is said and done, and you've got to run a business, you've got to make the quarter, you've got to commercialize the product, they're nowhere to be seen. So those of us that have been in the trenches, they know how things work. And just on the whole, and most of the academics, most of the journalists, they've never been in the trenches. They've got no idea. I've got to give you an example. I've got a mate down in Sydney.
To be fair to Rudd, though, he's literally negotiated with the Chinese at COP and stuff like that. Remember when he called them rat
I do,
fuckers?
But that's my point, Drew, is that's not doing business in China. That's not business in China.
Oh, come on, Andrew. Look, I got to say, that was a tough negotiation.
Yeah,
when he was going up against
it is.
Yeah.
And he'd probably be pretty good if he was doing business in China, but he hasn't done business in China. Is my point. So, to illustrate my point, I've got a mate down in Sydney who was in the building materials game. Doesn't speak a word of Chinese, but he was living in China. He was sourcing product. He was dealing with the Public Security Bureau and all that, all those mafia stuff. And he understands how China works better than 90% of the journos and academics I've come across. He really does. It's a whole different ballgame.
I think the Dakota thing overall is right, where he says, like, if you want to understand them, go watch The Godfather or watch The Sopranos.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. And so when we get back to
because it's very clannish, like at the top level,
100%.
Like Xi was installed.
Who?
He was installed though because he was like part of the top elite families.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Red royalty.
Yeah.
So
his father.
You're getting there, Drew.
But
you're learning.
But his father, Zhong Run, was one of the top revolutionaries.
Like, that's right. Red royalty.
Yeah.
There we go. So all this talk at the moment about tariffs and Trump. Trump's the bad guy. Albo comes back to Australia. The media press pack were up there. They're like, Trump, he's a big bad wolf on tariffs. And Albo's going, I believe in free trade. Let me get this straight. China does not do free trade.
They did 5 years of trade war against us.
They don't do free trade. If you look at the shipbuilding industry, if you look at Huawei, if you look at EVs, they've all been massively subsidized by the state.
Yeah. It's
a very different system. It's not free trade. When Trump came into power, Trump 1.0, the tariff on importing a US-made Jeep Wrangler into China was about 25%. So it was about 25%. The tariff on an imported vehicle into the United States at the time was 2.5%. Shift the decimal point one place. 2.5%. And that is basically customs clearance. And then if you look at, say, the exports of stuff from Shein and Temu, they were able to get stuff in under this de minimis legislation. Where if anything was under $800, it got in tariff-free. The US has been open to imports from the rest of the world really since the end of World War II. For decades, it was always number 1 or 2 in the most free economies studies, and rightly so. And Trump's turned around and he said, I remember in 2004, there was a cover story in Business Week, 3-word cover story. And this is what it said: the China price. And that article, that cover story, was all about how manufacturing businesses, particularly in the Midwest of the US, were being undercut by competitors from the PRC that they couldn't compete with. Some of them were getting state help. Some of them, they had much cheaper labor, environmental standards. And so what happened was we saw American companies shut down. They put their plant and equipment, whatever could be shipped, they put it in shipping containers, ship it across the Pacific with a senior manager who taught the locals how to do things. And so we saw this wholesale transportation of a big chunk of America's industrial base over to China. And that worked great until it didn't work great.
Yeah.
And that 30-year period of offshoring and outsourcing, it was great for Wall Street, it was great for corporate profits, not so great for Main Street, and not so great for America's industrial base. You've got to have an industrial base. And so, for example,
I agree with
I've never been interested in, I'm not a motorhead, I don't get excited by cars, but I'm fascinated by the car industry. Why is that? Because to have a big car industry, you need to be good at a whole bunch of related and supporting industries in that ecosystem. So you need to be good at electronics. You need to be able to source rubber. In China's case, they bet big on EVs because they dominated rare earths and critical minerals, which led into batteries and so on. And they placed these big bets. They had an industrial policy. And by the way, industrial policy is back, baby, in a big way.
I agree. Hasty was saying that the other day. I agree with
100% it is. They had Made in China 2025.
You've got to be pragmatic.
Which they announced in 2015. Very strategic, to give them credit. And they've achieved 80% of those objectives. In 2003, what's his name? Not Jiang Zemin. Keating's old buddy in Shanghai. Anyway, it'll come back to me in 2 seconds. He said, we're going to make China the world's #1 shipbuilder by 2015. They got there in 2013.
They got it.
Today, China makes 50% of the world's new ship tonnage. 50%.
Crazy.
The United States in under Reagan was the world's #1 shipbuilder. So that's the urgency in what Trump's doing. And he's saying, we've been open to, we're the most lucrative consumer market in the world. We've been open to the rest of the world for all this period of time. Stop. Now, the timing of it and the way it's done has been a little chaotic. And I think it's a little risky getting Japan and Korea offside, getting India offside.
That's my big critique.
And I think tariffing Australia is nuts because we have a trade surplus. Yeah. We're a loyal wingman / ally.
That's my main critique of it. The fact that if he was just doing it with China, I would actually be like, good. But it's because he goes against allies as well. That's where I have a disagreement.
Yeah, well, Japan and Korea are an ally, but I've done. I mean, I've got a lot of mileage on my Asia odometer outside of China as well. So I've been to Japan and Korea about 15 times each. I was very interested in both countries post World War II, post Korean War development, and so on. And in fact, I did a cold call to then Ambassador to Australia Shingo Yamagami, got him on Sky News.
Oh, he was awesome. Yeah.
Because Sky News. I mean, God forbid we'll get an Asian person on from Asia to talk about Asia. God forbid. So, I reached out to Shingo and I thought it would be great for the Australian public to have Japan's perspective.
He was a great ambassador. He was awesome.
And all that sort of stuff. And yeah, he's a great guy and I've got to know him a bit. But, if you're in Japan, you don't see Korean cars. If you're in Seoul, you don't see Japanese cars. And the Chinese the PRC auto market, imports are 3% of the market. 3%. That's slower than Germany, Japan, or Korea. These markets, how many times do I have to say it? These markets are highly protected.
Yeah.
And whether it's tariffs or non-tariff barriers, and people that haven't had the experience of getting a completed technology product exported through customs, distributed in these markets, they don't know what they're talking about. Unless you've been in the trenches and had that experience, I take what a lot of economists say with a pinch of salt because they haven't done the business.
No, I get you there. Listen, I actually think tariffing China is necessary to rebuild the American industrial base. My main critique is just when he goes against Europe, when he goes against Australia, and the other, and also he's been too brutal to Taiwan with TSMC, like these are the allies. These are crucial allies in East Asia. You shouldn't be going after them as well. So that's my big
I mean, let me put it this way. There's a bottle of Shiraz I used to quite enjoy, Yalumba Patchwork, giving it a plug. I can get that about $15 here. At Changi Airport in Singapore, it's $50. I've seen that in Jakarta for over $100 US in a bar. So why does it cost so much? Because of domination of local distributors, lack of competition, and they're fleecing the consumer. These markets are highly protected, Taiwan included. I mean, Taiwan for many years had a monopoly on brewing. They had one beer brand called Taiwan Picho, Taiwan Beer, and that was owned by the KMT. I mean, So wanted to, just on that point, there's a relatively new book out called...
also, what do you reckon, Andrew?
On Apple in China, which by Patrick McGee. And I bought it. I haven't got to it yet. I'm buying China books faster than I can read them. But that book is, I think, the most important book in economic history in the last 20 years about how Apple, the world's greatest company, got captured in China. It's going to be a fascinating read. But if you don't have time to read it, Patrick's done a bunch of interviews on YouTube.
Do you want to sponsor Collide here?
Yeah, sure. Which one am I responding to?
So most Chinese solar and EV companies sell at a loss and heavily rely on government subsidies. Why shouldn't we let the Chinese government keep on subsidizing our consumption? That's his argument.
Where's the question?
See?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we let the Chinese government keep on? Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to have sovereign capacity. One of the things, it's funny. I was doing some research because the provincial governor or the state governor, Premier of the state of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, is going to China in September. And I was doing some research on China's got a strategy of influencing at sub-national level.
Yeah.
So an example of that would be them cozying up to Gavin Newsom in California or various state governments here, Western Australia or Victoria. In 2006, the then Premier of Victoria, a guy called Steve Bracks, was going to our sister province, Jiangsu province, and he came away with two things. An agreement to extend the relationship with the province, but also, by the way, I should interrupt. I'm kind of new to the socials things, but I'm on Twitter, and you can follow me.
Yeah, I'll put up your Twitter.
You can follow me at AJ.
Putting up
PHELO. There you go. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, no.
You can follow me there. That's when I was in better shape, and I won my looks like a gold medal. It's a bronze in the 400 free. Anyway, so the other agreement Brax came away with was, wait for this one, an agreement to train Chinese auto workers. How it started, how it's going.
What a fucking idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would we train Chinese auto workers?
It's illustrative of the cost of not understanding PRC Inc. or PRC, the CCP party state, or insufficient understanding of it. We see this happening around the world until Trump 1.0. For example, in the UK right now, we've got this case of the mega embassy, or I call it the mega ops center. If you've not been following that story, PRC Inc. has submitted plans to build an embassy that's not. You were arrested outside the current embassy, right?
Portland Place.
So the plans for this one is not twice the size of the current embassy. It's not 3 times the size. It's not 5 times the size. Wait for it, folks. It's 10 times the size of the current embassy. Furthermore, it's on the side of the old Royal Mint. There's some historical ruins of Cistercian monks that, I don't know, they're 500 years old or something. And it's right next to all these telecommunications lines for the banking industry and all that, right? So how it even got to the point where they looked at it is beyond me.
Crazy.
But what it suggests to me, and I moved from in 95, I moved from Beijing to Hong Kong, and I moved from Hong Kong with work to the UK in early 97. So I witnessed the handover of Hong Kong back to PRC sovereignty, which I never opposed, by the way. Hong Kong was Chinese. It's always been Chinese soil.
I think the Hong Kongers should have been given a choice of becoming a city-state like Singapore.
Yeah, well, I mean, they got in strike because they had the gall to want to elect their own people to local council, and Beijing don't like it. But I remember when the handover happened, talking to my UK colleagues, and they knew nothing of the history. And of all countries, Britain should understand China better than anyone else, because ever since Lord Macartney was at the Qing court, and refused to kowtow, and they wanted to force trade on them and all the rest of it. There's that long history of how the Chinese, even pre-communism, are going to negotiate. They're tough negotiators, and they're always negotiating from the time they pick you up at the airport. I mean, Westerners think they sign a piece of paper at a boardroom and the deal's done. The Chinese are always negotiating when they pick you up, when they drop you off, during the banquet. It never stops. And then you add to that the sort of Marxist concept of continuous struggle. But the learning is not handed down. And remember our old buddy George W. Bush?
Yes.
Yeah, he used to say, there's an old saying, might have been Tennessee or Tennessee. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me again. I mean, it's like how many? There you go. I mean, how many? It's like every time there's a new election, here's a fresh batch of new bunnies They haven't got a clue about China, and they think they're going to be different. They're going to be diplomatic and be very respectful of history and all that sort of stuff. And they're going to stabilise relations. And this new Labor government in the UK is a classic example of that. They've got no idea what they're dealing with. But Trump's different. See, Trump's got a little bit of soprano. He's got a little bit of gangster in him.
Definitely. No, I would say more than a little bit. I'd say
maybe a little bit. And you know what? Frankly,
he was a property mogul for like 40 years in New York City.
There are stories, but anyway. But you know what? If you're dealing with Putin and you're dealing with Xi Jinping, you need a bit of gangster in you, quite frankly, because if you're, goody two shoes, they're going to take you to the cleaners.
Well, I think that's what happened to Obama, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. Not just him, but others as well. I mean, I've had a lot of this controversy about winding back the funding for NGOs and stuff. I've been around a lot of NGOs in Asia, like Indonesia, for example, donating. I was at Gates Foundation meeting in Jakarta. They donate medical equipment or whatever. And I go around to clinics around, rural Java or whatever, and you see this equipment in a corner gathering dust because they don't know how to use it. And the people from the NGO are super, they're super polite, super nice, very naive, and they get taken to the clinic. It's a great book. I highly recommend. It's by a British economist, a guy called Joe Studwell, and it's called Asian Godfathers. And it's all about ethnic Chinese business dynasties in Southeast Asia.
That sounds cool. I'm going to look that up.
Southeast Asia in the post-colonial era, and how they worked with the indigenous governments, people like Sukarno and so on, and they got licenses.
Keating loves Sukarno.
They got licenses for cloves, and they got licenses for banking.
No, Suharto was a dictator, right? Keating loved
so
Keating loved him so much.
Yeah, we probably don't have time to dive into Indo in any great depth.
We've got to.
What's the go with China and Vic Labour?
So Andrew, what time should we wrap this up so that I can take you?
Soonish.
Yeah. Okay. How about we do this as like the last question?
I got a plane to catch. Yeah. And
how about we do this?
We're going to grab a bite to eat before that.
Yeah. So how about we do this as the last question?
My favourite footy team are playing, so I want to check that
out. So what's the go with China and Vic Labour? Do you want to quickly?
Oh sure. Well, they're very close. Let's put it that way.
They love it.
So the state of Victoria was the first province, subnational government in the whole wide world to sign on to the Belt and Road Agreement. And that caused a bit of consternation, you might say. And so there was some new legislation that was created under then Foreign Minister Maurice Payne. It's called the Foreign Relations Act. And it said that no, and of course, then we had the situation with that Port of Darwin, where we had this guy, Adam Giles, who was on the other side of government, who signed that agreement, and he was asked in a press conference a couple of days later. There's this document that says Landbridge has close ties with the People's Liberation Army. That document was in Chinese, and he said, we'll get that translated. Unfortunately, the horse had already bolted. They'd already signed the deal. But I think there's something fishy going on between Vic Labour and Labour in general and PRC interests. And we have this thing in Victoria called the Big Build, which I think, kind of could be Belt and Road under another name. Two of the big contractors, I think, or one of them is John Holland, which was sold off to China Communication and Construction Corporation.
John Holland,
in 2015. That was signed off by Joe Hockey.
That's nice.
So look, I mean,
what the fuck was Joe Hockey thinking?
Well, the thing is, I got to be a little charitable, right? Because I was in the first wave of China nerds a long time ago. So after a while, you figure out how things work, okay? But and the penny drops. But I can't expect everybody else to have my experience. They've been doing other things in their lives, and I can't expect everybody to be a quote unquote China expert. I hate that term, by the way, because I learn something new every day. But
it was so annoying because back when my main thing was talking about China all the time, I'd have always these people go, "You're not a real expert, like James Lawrence, and you're not allowed to speak." And it's like, fuck you. Like,
that guy is a look. After Tiananmen Square, they published this. Xinhua published this little booklet. It was called "A Professor on the Riots." So what they're trying to do is say, "Oh, he's a professor. You can't challenge him because he's a professor. Therefore, he knows everything, and therefore he's right." Why?
Same with Dave
Why?
Brophy.
Why is he right? Because he's a
professor.
Bingo.
So it was same with Dave Brophy, same with Jane Goldie. All these academics in the show were like, "How dare the fucking unwashed masses talk about China?" Drew's
here's the thing. What I like to do is I like to talk about this stuff to butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. Not the candlestick makers, not so much, but but you get my point, right? The great unwashed, the deplorables, they're my people, they're the people I like to get out and talk. And let's not be condescending towards them. They get it, and they're concerned, and they're the people that send their sons and daughters into the military,
Yeah.
So let's not be condescending to ordinary working people. They're our brothers and sisters in our country.
Yeah, they're our country.
And they're interested in this subject matter.
Of course, everyone's interested.
I try and not make it. I don't use words like normative and performative when I talk, partly because I don't know what they mean, but also because I don't want to get caught up in economic in kind of academic jargon.
No, fair enough. So
should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Thank you everybody Thank you everybody for tuning in to episode 87 of the Drew Pavlich Show.
Yeah, we should call it, because I ramble and go off on tangents all the time, and so does he. So
yeah. No, but it was good. It was good. I thought it was really interesting. I was reminded of so many interesting China Australia stories that had flown past. I forgot many of them.
Okay, and let's just sign off with this one, Drew, shall we?
Yeah.
There she was. Drinking gin. And the phone went ping. Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
Bing.
She. Yep.
High five.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That was good. It's good.
Hey,
All right.
and by the way, Drew and I sometimes we disagree on things. We have the odd difference of opinion. That's all good. But you have to admit, he's got a beautiful head of hair.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Good stuff. Very good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with the Drew Pavlich Show. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you. God bless.